Hello and welcome to Extreme Gameplays, where I play games stylishly. Today I've decided to work on a project that's been on my mind ever since I finished my no upgrade run for the game you're gonna be learning today. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is a game that I got into a couple of months ago, but it was no ordinary couple of months, as it was full of experimenting and learning the combat system and much more about the game to the point of semi-mastery. I say semi because there are still some things that I may not know about the game, but who knows when I'm gonna learn them. This game is a whole deep ocean. Today's guide is gonna be a full-on, in-depth combat guide about Metal Gear Rising. But there is a quick thing I want to get out of the way to set the stage for this combat guide and the idea of this combat guide. So to start it off, I want to cover something regarding Metal Gear Rising's combat, or to be more accurate, its portrayal by some part of the fanbase for being this stylish metal no-nonsense game where you can stylishly wreck enemies left and right with no repercussions. The video you see on the screen now defines what I mean perfectly. From the start of the clip all the way to the point I'm explaining right now, you'll come to see that the encounter is designed with strategic approach in mind rather than stylish. Of course, being left with one enemy under the full moon is when you can more easily decide whether you want to combo him to death or eliminate him as fast as possible, but it's still not over then. You still have to think ahead regarding what you do after you beat the hard last enemy, which comes by studying the room a lot of times, by either restarting the encounter or a lot of replays. What we're left with after eliminating him is two rocket jack-offs that have to be dealt with first as a strategic approach to this encounter. The second one gets a bit harder, but it's not like we're taking any rockets to the face or anything. Just gotta bait the two fodder around for a clear opening to attack him. What you're gonna be seeing in this clip if you rewatch it is really a lot of the strats that I'll be teaching today, only when rewatching and getting a smarter understanding of what's going on. By then, you'll frankly know every purpose behind every step from the start of the encounter to the end. So far, the encounter is looking great, but it is far from over, as we have another wave starting up right now in a unique way. You see, I shot that guy from afar using my rocket launcher to lure him into where I am. This will make sense in a little bit after he's dead in this 1v1, but for now, just know that this is a showcase of a later lesson that I'll be explaining. As you can see, I am having my fun with him right now, but it's not just mindless fun. There are combat in and outs that are going on right now that only an experienced player may catch. Eventually, this well thought out isolated 1v1 will be over in a bit, and then we'll get the delayed spawning of the two Mastiffs that naturally would be in this encounter right now. Except they're not. When the two Mastiffs spawn in is when you'll see me do different tactics all of a sudden. It almost feels like the player has switched. This will be all explained throughout the guide, and by the end we'll be taking a second look at this encounter to dissect some of the strats used in this video. Of course, it's not all the strats, as I find that hard to do in one encounter, but a fair amount of them are used here, so do watch carefully because they will come up in our in-depth combat guide about Metal Gear Rising. Enjoy the rest of the encounter and see you in a bit. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the starting segment of this video. Just felt like starting the video off like this to set the record straight. This is not a combo guide or a combo mat guide. This is general combat in and outs, tactics, hidden mechanics, hidden properties, and mostly focused play. You can come up with your own combos however you want. This is not the video for that. I do however teach some useful stuff that might be useful for your combo game here and there. But the gist of this video is that it's efficiency focused, not stylish focused. I will have a table of contents in the description and timestamps in the video for you to navigate easily to the lesson you want to learn. Without further ado, let us begin with the lessons. Enjoy the video. Now, the most important thing I want to get out of the way in this combat guide is that this is going to be on the very hard difficulty, as I do find the Revengeance difficulty to be way too easy and boring by the time you get good with parries. Revengeance difficulty, of course, does offer more difficulty than very hard in some unique instances, like Armstrong for example, or ranged attacks dealing more damage to Raiden. But generally, very hard is the more fun difficulty and more difficult than Revengeance difficulty. Just wanted to get this out of the way in case you thought I would be going with Revengeance, where parries instantly destroy an enemy. This is going to be about very hard. Now we can proceed with the first lesson. Now I'm going to be separating those into deeper categories. For example, the first lesson is going to be the Blade mode. Then it has sections in the Blade mode that I'm going to be teaching one by one. After Blade mode, we're going to be having defensive options. After that, we're going to have offensive options. So on until the very end of the combat guide. So to start off, the first category is going to be about the Blade mode. Now, one short little thing before starting the Blade mode lesson properly is that you can actually walk while in Blade mode, be it backwards, wherever you want, sideways, however you want. It happens by pressing the left stick down and then going forward, taking the left stick wherever you want. So basically like sprinting in Call of Duty. You can't walk while slicing, by the way, so yeah. Just wanted to mention this before getting into the lesson properly. You can just walk if you feel like you're far away from the enemy. It happens even in slow-mo. Let's start the lesson properly. Now, the first branch I want to talk about in the Blade mode lesson that I'm teaching right now is the Precision Blade mode. Now this, I felt like this is very important to explain since it is not even explained in the game. I'm not going to be talking about the one where you go mindlessly like this and slice enemies crazy like that with horizontal slices and vertical slices and whatnot. I'm going to be talking about Precision Blade mode. Now what Precision Blade mode is kind of more the game combat system when it comes to Blade mode. Usually when you think of Blade mode, you think of going ham and mashing the button all the way on a boss that you defeated, like like this. Which this is fun for finishing a boss, but there's a deeper use of Blade mode than just that. And it is Precision Blade mode, like this, and then taking the spine to heal your fuel and your HP, which is pretty well explained in the game. Learning Precision Blade mode is one of the most important things in Metal Gear Rising, as it's going to be useful and vital for the majority of your combat scenarios going forward, as it gives you the chance to do stuff like this basically. This and making QTEs on some of the bosses easier, as you may need that, especially against Armstrong. It is absolutely a must to learn Precision Blade mode rather than going ham with the Blade mode, and I'm going to be explaining just something in a bit. And it is doing this whole slicing and dicing thing that you're seeing on the screen right now, but in an easier way. Because what the game expects from you, as it explains to you what a Blade mode is something that is not ideal, and it's the way the controls are for Blade mode, and how the game does not explain the better way to do Precision Blade mode, which I'm here today to explain for you, hopefully, and I hope it also helps. You see, what the game explains to you about Precision Blade mode is that you have to aim perfectly with the right analog stick, take it to like this, let it go, and Raiden slices. But you saw me back there not even slicing with Raiden. Like sometimes it was supposed to happen like this, but Raiden did not even like slice the way I aimed, the way I wanted to. And that could be hurtful in later challenging important runs that you might do in your game. Like if you're fighting Armstrong and he throws to you the boulders and QTEs and whatnot, it's not gonna look pretty when you try to parry, when you try to like slice and dice through them for a huge damage on Armstrong just to fail. So for that, I have made a separate video before that I'm going to be playing right now, and I hope you guys learn the message in that video. It is very simplistic. It's just a way to do Precision Blade mode in a more accurate way, and like a way that is a ton more accurate than, you know, going the way the game explains. So watch the next couple of minutes and I hope you learn something from it. Then I'm going to be catching up with you guys again. Do this against bosses and all that. No precision, no focus, no nothing. This is just for fun. But then, we also have the technical part of blade mode, the true and optimal way of using blade mode. And I'm sure you all know it, it's by using the right analog stick to aim, and then you let go of the right analog stick so that right hand swings in that direction you aimed at. Now, I'll be honest and come out, this is an extremely flawed way of explaining the blade mode precision tactics in the game. I don't know why the game explains it that way. You'd have moments where a right hand would change the direction ever so slightly, but it still might mess up with your aim, or even worse, situation where you let go of the stick and right hand doesn't do anything, he doesn't even swing. The game thinks you slowly took the analog back to neutral position, and it flat out cancels your attack as a whole, which is not something you want against Armstrong or any other precision QTE moment. In comes the best way of doing precision blade mode, which is not explained by the game. I don't know why they didn't explain it, but they just didn't. The best way to ever do precision blade mode is by aiming with the right analog as you always do, but you don't let go of it. What you do is you aim with the right analog and press one of the two buttons, square or triangle, and right hand swings in the direction you aimed at, flawlessly with the best precision. No more weird angle change at the last second or anything. Pressing either square or triangle swings the blade in the direction you aimed at. This way you will have much better precision and you will rarely miss any of the blade mode weak points that right hand identifies. This will especially be useful against Armstrong with all of his QTEs, or any other enemy that you want to slice his weak point. Okay, so now that you're done with that, I hope the message was clear, because you're gonna be running into a lot of points where you have to aim perfectly like this, boom, slice with square or triangle for a better precision thing. It's just that you have to get yourself used with claw gripping the controller, which is something that that I highly recommend in Metal Gear Rising, and like generally in action games if you're willing to go that far explaining it, because precision blade mode is, as I said, one of the most important things in Metal Gear Rising. It is like a pillar to the combat of Metal Gear Rising. As you can see, I'm slicing through these guys' vital spots with little effort. It's not even problematic to me, which it used to be before, but like, of course, after learning that trick, thanks to Hyper Fist that I mentioned in the video, blade mode's gotten a lot better. On PC, I don't think this needs to be explained or anything, but like, you get the meaning. Blade mode precision. Now let's move on to the next lesson regarding blade mode. The next lesson is gonna be blade mode delimbing. What you're seeing on the screen right now is a Mastiff that has a blue arm. You may say, what is that blue arm? Or you may even know about it while playing Metal Gear Rising, as it is well taught, I believe. The game does a nice job teaching you what happens when an enemy has a blue spot. It means you can delimb that enemy by just attacking him with the blade mode. Like if you hit that blue spot as that, with blade mode equipped, you can delimb him, limiting his moveset. Like, see, the Mastiff right now starts to only attack with these drop kicks and nothing else. You can get him to a point where he's all blue, and by that point you can hit a vital spot just to get the kill and move on. Now, there's something very important regarding delimbing with blade mode that you need to know right now moving forward. And is that these fodder enemies, they can get blade mode critical hit and taking their spine out without having to get any part of their body blue. The thing about getting the bodies of the enemies blue before blade moding them to delimb them happens for every enemy except for these fodders. These fodders or flying enemies can be easily blade moded through their critical spot as such. I can just hit it right now, and I don't even have to get any part of this guard's body to be blue. This is a thing that goes for every fodder, and I'm gonna be explaining it even further later down the combat guide, but you need to know this. If you see a fodder, you can simply slice his vital spot, take his spine, and move on without having to make any part of him blue. You can even slice his legs or his arms. It doesn't matter, it is your approach. You can delimb these guys however you want. But if you find a Gecko, if you find a big enemy with a blue, flashing part of their body, this means you can enter blade mode and slice and dice through that blue part, either with precision, or if you feel comfortable, just go nuts like this. It does not really make any difference. Now, we have a couple of examples right here, a couple of guys to start delimbing through blade mode, and I'm gonna be showing you guys what I mean with grunts not having access to the... what I did to that small enemy back there, and how I basically delimbed him without having any part of his body blue, is the same thing here. See, the Gecko has the blue, flashing rockets on top of its head, meaning I can slice through them like, basically like this. And it basically takes away the, you know, the ability of them to start shooting me however they want. I'm gonna be explaining a much better example with the next two enemies that are right next to me right now. After they're done beating my ass. Now that we're done with the Gecko, I'm gonna demonstrate what I mean with Delimb being blue parts, even though I already explained it with the Mastiff, but it is just important to keep on repeating it because it's an important mechanic. This guy now has his arms blue, and what you can do is delimb him using blade mode like this. So one slice is all it takes. Now what this guy has left is only kick attacks. He's basically a shallow of what he used to be. You know, you can disrespect him however you want, basically. If you keep on hitting him, you get hit, like his legs to be blue, meaning you can delimb his legs as such. But this guy is no quitter. He is God's strongest soldier. What he does is, of course, keep on fighting, and what we do is eliminate his ass, basically. But I hope the lesson for delimbing using blade mode is clear right now to you guys. You can just delimb the moment the enemy has a blue part of his body, or if it's a fodder, you know, flying fodder, on the ground fodder, it doesn't make any difference. You can delimb them however you want. Blade mode cancelling. Now this is a very important lesson that you also need to learn, as is with every other lesson that I'm going to be teaching today. What you're seeing on the screen is me cancelling animations with the blade mode. This can happen whether you have fuel or you don't have fuel. This is not fuel dependent. You can cancel any animation or nearly any animation on the ground and in the air, as like doing this, you know, like this into that. It also cancels through your next attack in the air if you cancel it like that. This attack is usually like that and then the second hit. You can cancel the first and then just land the second one just like that. Now this is good for DPS purposes, as you can see. This is your basic DPS. This is hard to do, but like it is a basic idea of what your DPS is in the game. And if you even don't have blade mode, it doesn't make any difference, as you're gonna be slaying like this basically. Like, now something I really need to preface about your high time you know, blade mode canceling, which is your DPS, is that it's not so easily cancelable. Like, you don't just attack cancel like this normally, like, you know, like you would boom boom boom. You don't just press L2. The thing with this specific cancel and some other cancel that I'm going to talk about right now, more importantly this right now, if you want to cancel this into a blade mode, you gotta press L2 and the jump button. It's the same thing with the high time. You do this, you press L2 and jump button at the same time at a specific timing. You really need to nail down the timing for this one, which is something I really need to preface right now. The timing is very weird to learn this. Like, even now I don't feel comfortable with it, but like I am getting better at it every day. It's one of these things that grows on you. Don't sleep on it and say whatever, I don't need this DPS. Trust me, you need this DPS. That's basically it for the high time DPS canceling. You cancel it with L2 and X. You press them at the same time. Preferably a little bit L2 and X. Like first L2 then X, but it is just generally at the same time. Honestly, yeah, at the same time. Like if you're done connecting this, just cancel it with L2 and X at the same time. It happens the same with the drop attack that I'll explain later if you want to be staying on the ground. Now this has other uses other than just being like, you can't cancel this right now. You can't cancel the tackle with like if you do the follow up to the tackle, you can't cancel it. There are some attacks that you're not going to be canceling, but basic attacks, like, you can just cancel out of them out of nowhere. Like this attack right here, you cannot cancel through it. So just make sure to experiment what attacks you can and can't cancel out of, because like long animation attacks like these, you can't blade mode cancel out of them instantly. Like even if it's like this spin attack, you can't cancel out of it. This, you can't cancel out of it instantly. Experiment with which attacks you can and can't cancel, because there's just a lot. Like you can keep on doing this on the small geckos to control them pretty nicely. But like, you get the point. It's that you can cancel animations like this. And then you're back to business. Now, blade mode cancelling is very important, and it has been discussed in other combat guides before, but there is another very important use to blade mode cancelling, and is that to access this navigation bar, you need to actually do it the blade mode way to actually, access that fast enough. Like, let's say you're in the middle of combat and you want to switch to a secondary or something. If you want to access to the secondary after this, what you do is not triangle, square, and then mash the right D-pad just for it to pop up now. That is very, very late. What you want to do is triangle, square, cancel, and then access it. See how fast I access that? Let's say I want to do triangle, square, triangle into the triangle attack of the pincer, the scissors. What I do is triangle, square, triangle, L2 cancel, then I press the right on the D-pad, switch to the pincer. That way, no time is lost between my attacks. This can happen with everything, like if you do this, see how fast that switch up was? You just gotta press blade mode once, let go, press the right D-pad to quickly access this. It's the same thing, because accessing that navigation menu is a whole other thing that I'm gonna be talking about in a later lesson. You can't access it while sprinting. You can only access it by either standing, walking, or running. That's the only instance you can access it. I'm gonna be teaching you guys some later lessons how you can do this and how quick this is, how fluid this is. See that? You're still on the fly, you're still running away. There's nothing troubling you or anything. You're still switching pretty quickly. But for now, just know that if you're willing to access the navigation menu, you can just easily do it using the blade mode cancel. It's not just for combos. It can be very, very good for the navigation menu access. Now, this is the end of the blade mode lesson. There are other things you can learn about the blade mode, like being in blade mode does kind of it messes with the enemy AI, making them do some actions that they wouldn't usually do. Like, it's kind of a bait type thing that I don't really know much about, and I'm sorry that I'm not going to be explaining it today because I frankly didn't really find it that useful for my combat play. It can be useful against Monsoon to bait him to do that one attack you always want him to do, but that's just, the gist of this whole mechanic. One other way you saw me do throughout explaining blade mode is going into tackle and then accessing blade mode to slice them up and get their spines and whatnot. That is a way that I decided to show but not really explain so much. It is very, very simple. All you have to do is tackle an enemy, then there's a prompt that you can press L2 and you access the actual slow-mo blade mode. With all that being said, we can now move on to the next segment of the combat guide, which is going to be the defensive options. Blocking and parrying. Now, the first thing we want to learn about defensive options is, of course, the name of the game being parrying and blocking and whatnot. And this is going to be the first segment, the first part of learning what defensive options you have in Metal Gear Rising. What you're seeing on the screen right now is nothing but blocks. And I better do a better job at just blocking on the ground, I guess, and not, in the air. This is the normal blocking you have. You do it by holding the analog, taking the analog towards the enemy and pressing square. Now, if there are consecutive attacks coming your way, you want to be, taking the analog towards the enemy and pressing square for each and every attack that comes your way. You don't want to just take the analog towards the enemy one time and then just basically mash your way by mashing square. That's not what you want to do. You want to take the analog forward and press square for every single attack. And Monsoon will make sure you learn that lesson. If not, some other boss that comes after, you're going to be learning that lesson pretty well. I felt like explaining it anyhow because it is very, very important. Now, that is blocking. We also have the name of the game, parrying. Boom. Now, parrying is in Revengeance is very, very broken. Hence why we went with very hard, the better difficulty. Parrying is something that you just need to nail the timing of, and by the time you do, you're going to be very, very good at the game, because parrying is essentially the combat system, as I explained. What parrying unlocks for you is, like, for some enemies it unlocks the possibility to grab them. For other enemies, you basically punish them pretty well as you parry them. Like, it is just a generally, like, one of your best tools, or if not your best tool, because, you punish an enemy pretty well. Now, you can't block or parry grab attacks, as you saw me, evade that attack back there. You can also evade by other options, like the defensive offense, but that has its own lesson. Now that I parried this guy enough, he has, his arm glowing, meaning I can delimb him. And again, I just failed that parry, but like from now on he's gonna be doing a lot more one-handed attacks or the drop kick basically. You better be watching out for the camera adjustment as well whenever things happen, you know, whenever the camera goes insane. Hopefully you won't mess up your parry. Boom. That's the other arm, and now he's gonna spam us with things we can punish him for. See what parrying can give you for fodder enemies? This is going to be explained later on, how it is important to do this rather than parry them and then grab them. Which that's what parrying does for you for a lot of instances. You parry the enemy, then he's in a stunned state and you can grab him however you want. Now we move on to the next lesson about blocking and parrying, and it's very, very simplistic. It's just that you're going to be blocking in the air and on the ground like this. That's air blocking. And, you know, I almost tried to do air parrying there, but I'm going to demonstrate it in a second. Hold on. There is the air parrying. Pretty much the same as the ground parrying. You don't want to be going for that a lot. Unless on one enemy. Like, later on we're going to meet some running geckos that are going to be very dangerous. Which doing, not running geckos, sorry, the four-legged things, robots that go on, that you can take out via stealth and all that. Which I'm going to be demonstrating on the screen right now. It is not really a big difference to do air parries or ground parries. I prefer ground parries since they're safer and you don't have to time it. So, you know, air blocking, air parrying, same thing. Here's another air blocking. But the thing that I wanted to talk about air blocking that might come to use sometimes is that it is very good in the sense that it gives you a nice view of the battlefield after you do it. Like, for example, let's say this guy does an attack and I ground block it. I'm kind of locked right in front of him, leading to all dangerous situations and whatnot. But if I air block, it's going to be a whole different story. It's like, if you air block, you can have a nicer view of the battlefield after what you just did. Like this. See, like, you're kind of pushed back a little better, and you have a nice, you know, footing with the enemy. Rather than blocking in their face and staying in their face, which is just, it's kind of, this can lead to all sorts of danger, you know. Unless you're good at the game, of course, which by that point, that's a whole other story. But like air blocking generally just gives you a nice view of the whole arena after you just got done blocking something. Defensive offense. Now, defensive offense is the move that you can purchase in the store. This move right here. This move gives you instant iframes the moment you press the button, which can be very, very good to evade grabs since you can't block these. The thing about this move is that you can't do it in the air. You generally don't want to be in the air a lot in Metal Gear Rising, like as a whole, but like, that's besides the point. This is defensive offense. You press it, you gain iframes. Even the forward one that doesn't look like it has iframes, it does still give iframes, as you can see. Jumping. Now, I know the first thing you thought of is the RDC World Hood Olympics, but this is what I mean by jumping. Not actually jumping a homie that is walking down the street. So like, jumping to evade attacks is one thing that can be useful for, you know, some types of runs. Let's say you're doing a no block run, no evade run if you're that extreme. You can use jumping to evade grabs, to evade a lot of things. Like, let's say you're doing a no upgrade, no move buying. This is your ideal way of dodging your grabs. Like, if you get faced with a grab, you jump and hold triangle like this. Press triangle like this. Of course, you maximize your jump, then press triangle. It's not the simple act of jumping, though. You have to, you know, like, jump to the fullest, then press triangle to fully dodge whatever it is below you, because enemies in here have a large hitbox. You can dodge like a lot of things, not everything, but it is very, very important to note out. And I want to preface that we're not talking about sprint jumping, as that is not going to be ideal to do whenever you're trying to evade a grab. Because sprint jumping is different than, you know, the normal jump. Sprint jumping jumps towards the enemy. So it's going to be pretty hard if you're trying to dodge an enemy attack by jumping, but if you sprint and all that, like, sprinting is a no-go whenever you're trying to, you know, like, see, I'm getting caught before getting the heavy attack in the air. So when I say jump, you know, to evade attacks, it means just normal jumping without sprinting, like this. Heavy attack. Now, that is not where jump evading ends when it comes to grab attacks. as you can pretty well, you know, just smash square in the air to also dodge enemies, but it is preferable to press triangle since you gain some extra height as you do that. Like just jumping in the air and mashing square is not gonna always work, especially against Armstrong or some other enemies. Jumping in the air and mashing square, it is good to keep you in the air though. That is one thing very important. As you can see me in this clip right now, I'm trying to evade Metal Gear Excelsius attack by just basically jumping in the air and mashing square to stay aerial as the attack is going on. So it is very important, but for me, honestly, if I'm gonna be talking about grabs or most attacks, not that attack, of course, some attacks you can't really evade them. The most important use of this is just against grabs. You can use it against a lot of attacks, but like, see, like that attack hit me over there. And I said, John, you hit me. This is the first time I'm eliminating a Mastiff this high in the air. Very beautiful. Advanced evading. Now this is a lesson that is, I don't know which one it leans on to, whether it's evading or parrying. It does have to do with both of them. It's essentially if you want to get into an enemy as he's, you know, attacking constantly. Like this guy, the thing about this guy is if you parry him once, he parries back, and this is annoying. There is a way to, you know, do this and then evade like that, which is one thing right now as an as a advanced evading. The really important use of this is if you want to get into the enemy's face after you parried him, essentially. The first advanced evading that I explained, where you like let's say against these guys you do this thing to evade them, which is more so personal towards the enemy rather than an objective, you know, advanced evading or advanced parrying. The general lesson here is that you can do some odd stuff with parrying and then evading. And the one right now, the main one that I don't use a lot, but it is a thing in the game, is this one that you see me do right now. Like that, this way, after you parry, you can just get in the enemy's attack as you see me do. Like, you know, I'm kind of in his face all the time, increasing the pressure. This is in case you're in a hurry and you want to get into his face, you know, faster. I do not really recommend this a lot. Like, I'm personally not good with it. It might work wonders for you, just not for me though. So if you want to make use of it, make all the kinds of use you want to have for it. I personally would keep on going with just like, if I'm stuck against this guy, I would parry him, enter blade mode, then evade. This is the most useful way I can ever do advanced evading. The first one I mentioned is, as said, you parry forward, then you dodge into the enemy. Like, that is the fastest way you can cancel, you know, from parrying to evading towards the enemy. And that's that. Moving on to the next and final lesson in your defensive options. Tackle iframes. Now, the tackle attack in Metal Gear Rising is legitimately one of my favorite attacks in all of action games. It is very beautiful how just, like, it is, I don't know what to say. It is just beautiful. Like, you sprint, you press the heavy attack, and what you get is boom, like, you know, you just close in on the enemy while also attacking. You can follow it up with another triangle attack, and by that you can just do, like, let me demonstrate, this into that, dealing some very sweet damage. Now, there's something about the tackle attack that not a lot of people know, and even I learned it on stream thanks to Dante when he explained it. Not that I used it a lot, because for a beginner it's kind of hard, but there's some merit to it whenever you do some other challenging runs later down the road. And is that it has iframes. The iframe window is small, as you see back there. Now, if I ever do feel the need to explain what iframes are, it's basically invincibility frames that you gain, like, for a couple of frames, like that, for example. See how I tackle attack through that? You can't do it through a lot of grabs. You may be able to do it through some grabs, but not every grab. Like, see how I'm attacking through this guy's grabs, or attack, sorry. Like, see, that was a grab back there and I couldn't iframe through it. It is important that you know that this works against attacks in a lot of ways. Sometimes, like, let's say Armstrong does a huge QTE, you know, a huge area of effect attacks, and you don't have the option to do defensive offense somehow. I don't know how, but somehow. You can use this to iframe through things. I don't believe you can do it against grabs, but you can still get some nice merit out of it since it has iframes. Everything that has iframes is a nice thing. So yeah, that's the tackle iframes and the last defensive option. I hope you guys learned from the defensive options of today. Now we move on to something that is just as important as your defensive options, and it is your offensive options. First, we want to start with your damage per second in the game. Now, your damage per second in your video game is very, very, very important to know. It is essentially you dealing the most damage per second, and it doesn't essentially have to be your most damaging tool. Like, say you have the PINCER, a weapon that is known to deal high damage. It doesn't essentially mean it is your actual damage per second. Your damage per second might be anything ranging from your weakest weapon to your... maybe sometimes your hardest, strongest weapon is the DPS, but in Metal Gear Rising, surprisingly enough, it is with the high frequency blade or the normal blades that you equip, the main blades, by doing this basically and cancelling it constantly like this. This is basically your DPS. Now you've seen high time cancelling. High time is the name of the attack. You've seen it in countless other places. No need to go over why it's the DPS. Just know that it is the DPS. It is the most damage you can deal per second in Metal Gear Rising. And like, that's all you need to know. I'm demonstrating on the screen right now how I'm using it on a lot of enemies, on a lot of bosses. It is your general damage per second. Now there are of course other damaging options that can be considered damage per second. Like basically, like it or not, this is like a nice DPS basically. It might be slower than the high time, but it is nicer DPS. There are other tools that you can use to damage, like basically the three heavies, one light and another heavy. Basically 1, 2, 3, light, boom. This deals very sweet damage. It deals some very wide area damage. It hits the enemy a lot of times, building your fuel in a very beautiful way. And the damage is generally very, very good. Now on the screen is going to be an example of me using it, using dodge offset after these guys stop shooting like a bunch of assholes. So I take this guy on with that. Boom, 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 boom. Bam, 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 boom. Very, very nice attack. The thing about this attack is that this is your DPS if you're very, very limited. Like let's say against Armstrong where you can't use the PINCER. This is a nice choice to go with as your damaging option. Like this is weirdly enough your best DPS. It's either this or this attack right here. I'm not going to be adding a lot of examples of me doing what I want to do against enemies or whatnot. Let me just get a clear opening. So triangle, 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 square, triangle. Now the next lesson I want to teach right now is the air drop attacks from the air. Now this goes for every drop attack, whether it's with the high frequency blade like this, whether it's with the, you know, the pole arm. Let me just demonstrate it. As such. Or even with an attack that doesn't look like it's gonna work that way, like the PINCER drop attack. The thing I want to talk about right now is the fact that after you do these drop attacks, you are left airborne. Now this might be a detriment or like a really nice thing that can happen in the combat, like a happy accident or whatnot. But today there will be no accidents. Today you're gonna be learning when it can be useful, or how to make it useful, or how to get out of it. So like after you do an air triangle attack, you're left in the air. Look at Raiden. You're left in the air when you mash square, or like even when you just normally come out of this, you want to like parry, for example. You can't. Like what you're gonna get is Raiden attacking in the air like this. This goes on with the pole arm as well. I'm gonna get away from this guy. I don't want to really accidentally kill him right now, as I want to demonstrate some strat. But like it happens with the pole arm as well. Boom. Then mashing square, you're in the air. It happens the same thing with the weapon that is unexpected to have this property, but it does. Boom, and then you mash square, you're left in the air. It is an intentional game design. You are designed to be left in the air after dropping like this. Does this one also have it? This one also has it. See, you're designed to be in the air. Like even if ever so slightly in the air when dropping from, you know, airdrop attacks. Now this can be very, very useful against enemies that you want to make behave. Like say an enemy like this. You don't want to deal with this guy, you know, in a way where you want to battle him, parry him constantly. He parries you, you parry him, and you're basically stun locked. This can be useful for the category that I'm gonna be teaching after this, which is gonna be the crowd control. But for now, let's just keep it on the 1v1. Here's what you can do and how you make use out of the air, drop that you might want to do. Like here we are again with a better showcase. At least this guy is not almost dead. What you want to do with this fact that you're left airborne after dropping from the air with any of the weapons that you have is that you want to make the best use out of your aerial movement. Let's say you miss the drop. If you want to be on the ground, what you're better off doing is canceling it with the blade mode like this. But it's not a simple cancel. What you do is you cancel it with L2 and square, which like that. Like you just press L2 and square at the same time, and then you get the thing you want to get. Like, let me just demonstrate a little bit. Like that, then you're left on the ground. This is in case you want to block or something. You can even do it with L2 and jumping, but like that is better actually. Just go like this, L2 and X, then you're on the ground in case you miss something up. So that is one thing, and it's just if you want to be on the ground after executing the airdrop attacks. So when you're in the air, the last attack actually touches the enemy on the ground, and it has a hit property where it launches them back to the air. So you know what that means. You can just keep on comboing the enemy to death. It's a very, very efficient tool. In a run where you can't buy moves, or even in a run where you can buy moves, it is important. So like, you can go like this, attack in the air, the enemy is launched. Boom, 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 boom. Which looked very, very stylish, but besides that, that's not the point. The point is that it's very, very useful. So the fact that you're airborne means you can launch the enemy again and do all sorts of things with him. Let me demonstrate that one more time. Boom, all the attacks with, last one connects, and then you can connect a bunch of combos to him. It is very, very useful. You really, really need to implement it into your combat, especially for crowd attacks, crowd control, that I'm gonna get to in the next category for the offensive options. But just know that this works for every drop attack that you have. Now the next thing I wanted to talk about is in regards to crowd control in Metal Gear Rising and how weird that can be. On a first glance, this doesn't look like the most crowd controlling that you'll ever get in an action game, but believe it or not, this is how crowd controlling is done in Metal Gear Rising. You essentially do a bunch of drop attacks on the enemies that don't even look like they're good for crowd controlling, but they are. The idea is to drop on them like this and then go with the next idea of what you want to do with the enemies. I'm going to demonstrate it with a different weapon right now, which is going to be the pole arm, but on different enemies as well. The idea is that you do drop attacks, and these drop attacks deal a nice area damage. It's not just the damage part. It's about the area you deal the damage in, like this, for example. I'm like keeping a bunch of enemies down on the ground as I'm doing my thing, which is the idea of crowd control. You want to be controlling a crowd. It doesn't matter how you do it, doesn't matter, to who you do it. It's just that you're controlling multiple enemies, like 2 or more enemies at the same time. Of course, that's what crowd control is. Everybody knows. In Metal Gear Rising, it's just different. Like you go boom, bam, and then repeat. This is the most efficient way to do crowd control. Of course, you may see attacks like this. You may say, okay, extreme gameplays, what is this then? The thing is, these enemies are cracked in Metal Gear Rising. They won't just allow you to keep on attacking them multiple times. Now, the crowd controlling goes the same with the normal high frequency blade drop attack like this. And you can just catch more fish as you're doing this, like that. See, I'm catching multiple enemies. I'll be putting on a better demonstration with more enemies on the screen right now to get the idea clear and stuck to your head one more time. Crowd controlling is simply done with some attacks using the pole arm or the pincer, or if you do these air drop attacks with either the high frequency blade or the pole arm. You're left in the air after, so as I explained earlier on with the drop attacks leaving you airborne by design. It's not a bug, but here you are right now, controlling a crowd of enemies. I should also note that this is very nice and safe to use if used correctly. Of course, everything used correctly is going to be very, very nice and safe. Enemies rarely block this or never block this. Make sure to never mistake it with the, air kick attack by aiming the analog somewhere. Because if that comes out, it's not going to be pretty. They're going to block it and yada yada yada. Let's move on to the next lesson. Dodge offset. At this point, dodge offset is in every action game, so I don't even feel like the need to explain it, but it is essentially just this. You attack, evade, the next attack is the second attack, then evade again is the third attack, then evade again is the fourth attack. It's essentially your character continuing off where he left, so instead of just doing this again after the evade, instead of doing just simply that again, he does this attack after evading. And then again, you can follow it up and he does this attack, or not this one, like, he does this one after evading. Thing is, in Metal Gear Rising, it is not that crazy useful. It can be useful, as it always is with every mechanic in this game. It has its moments, but it is a thing of beauty. It's always a good thing when the game includes it for you. Boom, 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 dodge again. And let's just boom. You get the point of what dodge offset is. I don't need to keep on explaining it. The great thing is you can do it against every attack. Like you go boom, dodge, boom, 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 dodge forward, boom. That's what dodge offset is. Everybody knew about it. I just had to include it. It's a mandatory combat guide inclusion of dodge offset. You know how it is. Moving on. Sprint attacks. This is essentially just what you have in your moveset as you're sprinting. You can do light attacks, which is a bunch of slices. This can be good against some dwarf geckos or some enemies here and there, to just kind of keep them in check and keep on doing something while you're sprinting. There's always something to do in Metal Gear Rising while you're in combat. There's always a button to press. So like, you can just do something like this, which is attacking the enemies like that with light attacks. You can then do the tackle attack, which is the heavy attack of the sprint. This one is more favorable as it gives access to the Zandatsu if you know how to use it like this. Boom, 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 boom. You're slicing a bunch of enemies. I think I sliced 2 of them back there. Not really, but like, you have light attacks in this form and triangle attacks. Your other sprint thingy is not really an attack. It's a defensive thing when these guys shoot bullets at you. Which they're not right now, they're only shooting rockets, but it is what it is. If we're going to be talking attacks of the sprint, you only have this attack of the sprinting. The rest is just the tackle, which you know what the tackle is by this point. Boom, boom, boom. Moving on to the next lesson. Resource management. You surely remember that one encounter from mission 4 that I included at the start of the video. That video demonstrated a very important lesson, and it's resource management. Now, it might not have been that completely strict about resource management, given that I only used like one rocket launcher that I saved up, but it gets the point across pretty nicely. Resource management is very important in Metal Gear Rising, and it is a thing that you have to keep in mind on replay playthroughs. Your first playthrough, your second, your third, it is what it is. You can go on raw dogging the game, but there will come a point where you have to actually care about how many EMPs you're carrying, because you might need them on this type of enemy, for example. You're gonna run into a time where you're gonna need some rocket launchers to take a safe and smart and creative approach that I took with this encounter that you're seeing in mission 4 right now that I explained. You may need it here in this mission to destroy these security cameras without ever getting close to them and without getting detected. The point is, resource management in this game comes in the form of the fuel that you have, which is easily, it fills back and it comes back to you. You can just fill it up by doing billions of things, like attacking enemies or using the Zandatsu on critical spots or whatnot. Just know that it is the most important to keep your resources in check. And when I say resources, I mean the subweapons. Those are very important. Your grenades, your smoke grenades, your EMPs, your RPGs. And yeah, that's it. That's the lesson. Resource management. Moving on to the next lesson. Enemy prioritization. Now, enemy prioritizing is something very important in every action game that you'll come across. In Metal Gear Rising, it comes in the form of course, choosing the right enemy to eliminate first in a crowd. If you find yourself in a situation with a lot of enemies that are stationary and shooting RPGs, you need to find your strat around them. Like in this encounter right here, I'm circling around. You might say he's circling around for no reasons, but no. What I learned in this room is that if you get close to these guys with the RPGs on top of the buildings, they drop down. So what I'm doing is circle around the arena, tackling them and eliminating them one by one, then getting to the schmeat of the encounter and eliminating the rest of the enemies. Enemy prioritization also comes in a different form in Metal Gear Rising with, again, what you saw at the start of the stream, the spawn rules, which is a whole different segment than enemy prioritization, but it still feeds into what enemy prioritization is. Like, as you saw in that starting encounter, after I was done with that last enemy grunt, I moved instantly to the two rocket enemies and eliminated them, and then I moved on to the two fodders. And then I smartly isolated the one grunt from afar to come close and fight him, and then I took on the two mastiffs. It is very, very important to experiment with every encounter you run across. Let's say there is this encounter right here, you're fighting one of the Grads and there are some enemies around and all that. Like if you have a Gecko around and a Grad around and two fodder enemies that are shooting guns at you, the ideal strat is to either take out the soldiers first and then the Gecko and then the Grad, or the Gecko first and then the soldiers and then the Grad. You want to have your perfect comfortable living room whenever you're in an encounter. You want to have that perfect 1v1 scenario set up from the start in your mind whenever you replay the game. Of course, this needs a lot of experiments. This needs a lot of encounter restarting. This even needs a lot of replays of the game to truly nail it down. Like, I'm very good at enemy prioritization right now, but I can imagine myself getting better on like 2 more playthroughs. You never know. Flying enemies. This next lesson is very straightforward. It's in regards to what you want to do against flying enemies. After building up blade mode, you want to fly towards them and just do this. Blade moding them. They act like fodder enemies where you can just blade mode them without having their blue critical spots exposed. The idea is to just hold down the blade mode, hold up with the blade mode, like hold the right analog up and then slice, and you get a confirmed slice on a critical spot, leading to you taking the spine, and you know the rest. Now this works with the Sai as well. Whatever that helps you get close to flying enemies, make sure you use it. Like, let me just demonstrate a case with the Sai. Like that. Except, I think it requires a little more adjustment than the kick that I was doing back there. Right now I'm building up my thing again just to demonstrate it. Yeah, see, it's kind of iffy. The kick leading up to the flying enemies is a little safer than this one. But like, the main point is not what you want to use against flying enemies to close in on them. It's more so that you can use blade mode on them however you want to use it, just like you want to use it on fodder enemies. I wanted to get this out of the way as flying enemies can be extremely annoying. I know it's something specific to me. I have a phobia against flying enemies in every action game. But like, Metal Gear Rising treats them in a very difficult way that you can also get behind by being smart and, you know, using your blade more smartly. Stealth. Metal Gear Rising has a very cute approach to the stealth options you have in the game. It's very just I don't know how to describe it beside the word cute. It's just cute how they try to implicate what Metal Gear Solid used to do with its stealth. You have cardboard boxes, you have barrels that you can use to keep on hiding from the enemies. The enemies actually have a detection system, they have a caution system, just like Metal Gear Solid. Stealth in Metal Gear Rising though is very awesome if you know how to use it. There are some ways of using stealth, whether clearing an entire encounter using stealth, or making an encounter a bit easier on yourself using stealth, or clearing an encounter using stealth but in a very gimmicky weird way where you take one out, hide from the enemies, come back out, take another one out, and then hide from the enemies, and then take... You basically get the point of stealth if you play the game. What I want to talk about though is using stealth to your advantage in a way more advanced fashion. You see these 3D things that you can have in the subweapons of yours? You can use this to lure an enemy backwards to make an encounter a little more doable for you if you're doing an out of this world challenge run. Like, for example, if you're doing a no block run plus, no upgrade run plus, and you want to make an encounter easier for yourself, you can do that by way of experimenting with the encounters. Now here's a clear example of what I'm talking about when it comes to using stealth in the most optimal way. This is an encounter that can be very intimidating on the first sight, but after doing a bit of experimenting on my end, I found a very nice way of approaching the encounter while having some stealth involved and having some action involved. You can kind of do this encounter with just stealth all up until you meet the 2 dogs that you have to fight without stealth. But first of all, I lure this guy down here. When he looks away, I move up a little bit. Actually, when he climbs the ladder a little bit more, or not the ladder, when he takes the stairs a little more, I'm gonna be able to climb up and actually hide behind this block. This feeds into the enemy prioritization as well. Who do you want to take out first in your stealth? People may say the stealth is simplistic in Metal Gear Rising, but that's not like a detriment to the stealth of this game. It's amazing. I'm using the cardboard box. What I do first is I get behind this guy to take him out. After I take this guy out, I'm going to be waiting on top of this place like this for the other Mastiff to approach back down. Eventually, this Mastiff comes down the stairs. The other 2 behind him come down the stairs. Very intimidating. You don't want to make things very messy for yourself unless you want to have a self-imposed challenge of no stealth. Then by that point, you're going to be fighting 3 Mastiffs. If you're truly a masochist, you can even spawn in the other 2 dogs by climbing up the stairs a little bit. Which again, this all feeds into the spawn rules category that I'm going to be talking about later. But for now, this lesson is about the stealth and how you can use it to your advantage in many different ways. As I said, the 3D user, or experimenting with rooms like I am right now, and now I climb up, these 2 are left right here, I do not take them out. What I do is I get a little closer until I spawn the dogs, then I retreat. What this does in this specific encounter is, I aggro the dogs and I fight them down here, but the Mastiffs are not, they're not aware of this battle going on right here, even if they come down a little closer down. This is a very smart way of fighting these dogs without having to fight the Mastiffs as well. You don't want to be fighting Mastiffs and billions of enemies all at once. You want to make things a little more convenient for yourself. So I take care of this dog, then I take care of the other dog. As I said, you can make this messy for yourself by aggroing the Mastiffs as for yourself to fight them with these dogs. But my idea of this encounter is that I take up the first half of it with a stealth, then I spawn in the dogs to fight them safely like this. Now, not like I'm just safely fighting this dog, no problem at all. Whenever I'm done, I move back forward towards the 2 Mastiffs, and I can do whatever I want with them. I can either take both of them out using stealth, or I can take one out using stealth and fight the Mastiff just for sport to test my timing from here and there. Because it's not always great for me to, fight all the enemies using stealth. By that point, I'm missing out on the game's true schmeat, which is the combat. And, I want to have fun with the combat. But, I want some reasonable combat scenario, not some insane combat scenario where 3 Mastiffs, 3 dogs, go all out in a bloody battle for the ages. As you saw, I purposefully aggroed this last Mastiff. I could have perfectly taken him on using stealth, but I just wanted to have fun with him. The idea is very clear with the stealth in this game, but it just needs some experiment, especially for an encounter this deep like the one you're seeing right here. Which, as I said before, this feeds into the spawn rules as well, which I'll talk about in a bit. But it is also the stealth talk. That is basically it from when it comes to the stealth lesson in today's combat guide. Stealth is very important. Make very nice use of it. You can do drop attacks with the stealth, attacking from behind on on all the enemies. Make the best use of stealth to either trivialize encounters completely by eliminating every enemy using stealth, or by actually using stealth. Now, using stealth the way you saw me do in that clip is not exclusive to just that one clip. You can do it in this encounter right here, for example. This encounter gets way too messy if you don't know the approach with stealth, which I didn't for a hot minute. I didn't know how to approach it the way I am right now. But now that I know, I'm never approaching it in the messy way I used to before. I'm luring one of this one of these mastiffs. It's 3 mastiffs down there. Luring him up here, then I take him out by stealth. I have to be in this specific spot so that he doesn't hit me and, gets aggro and whatnot. After I eliminate him, I jump down and eliminate another mastiff, and by that point the encounter is a bit more reasonably difficult rather than unreasonably difficult. Because if I wanted to, I could have made this encounter 3 mastiffs, 2 running geckos, and it wouldn't be such a fun time. You'd get tossed around like it's an orgy in Greek mythology. This is the better approach. This is just the optimal approach. You can even take out all the mastiffs in this room via stealth, which prevents the other running geckos from even spawning, which is a very, very amazing thing. Now you can experiment with this by either doing a stealth only run or restarting the encounters countless times and trying to do them all via stealth. You can still run away from enemies and hide some places to come back to the stealth mode however you want. Metal Gear Rising stealth is a very, very important mechanic. Make good use of it, and not only in the VR missions and the actual full-on campaign. Let's move on to the next lesson. Ripper mode. Now the idea of Ripper mode on a first glance is that you can go all out with using your rage mode type thing in Metal Gear Rising, but it is far from that. While yes, you can use it like this on some enemies, going all out basically, that's the idea, right? Like, hey, it's Ripper mode, like what? Of course it's gonna be allowing me to go all out, slicing through enemies, which that's what it does. And you basically just cut through enemies without having the need to, activate your blade mode. The thing about blade mode is that you can both use it in that, shenanigans type way where you just go all out on enemies, but that's not totally safe. We can't say that's totally safe, because you're still wide open to attacks. That's the thing that I love about it very much, is that it's strategic. It can trivialize some enemies, some fodders, some geckos for you, some even mastiffs actually, but it's not so easy to do so. It's much better to have some focused play using the Ripper mode, as I'm going to be demonstrating right now. Stunning this guy, activating it, boom, 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 boom. Much better than trying to just attack him in the wide open like that. Now, of course, if the chance gives, you can go all out on these fodders, destroying them like that, since, you can have the option to do this. But what I'm demonstrating is something else. I'm demonstrating some stuff that could be useful for no upgrade runs. Like, for example, the one I demonstrated with the side just now back there, you saw me do it, where I grappled onto the mastiff and whatnot, then started attacking. In No Upgrade Run Plus, I found that to be the most useful way to use Ripper mode, because it's the most efficient as well. I have the enemy stunned in front of me, I have air attacks, and I can do all the things I want in the world against that Mastiff, just to be safe. By the time he's recovering, I'm gonna be attacking again. So you kind of you can see where this is all going. I can just loop a Mastiff, which is not something you see. It's not something you expect when you see an enemy like the Mastiff. You're expecting something like a formidable opponent, like a formidable fight. But once you know about that trick that I just talked about right now, where you can just simply loop a Mastiff, you keep on using that. It may be overpowered at times if you know truly what you're using, but that is with everything. If a right player catches a hold of parry mechanic, if he perfects the parry mechanic, he's slaying through the entire game. Now it's gonna be a case of overkilling on this guy just for funsies, because it's fun. The truth is, you can simply slay through enemies while the Ripper mode is active, like this. Boom. He's beheaded. Like, even sprint attacks, everything you're doing is essentially a Delimb. Now, I am in a New Game Plus mode right now, where everything I have is upgraded, yada yada, you know the rest. But even without that, on fodder enemies, on flying enemies, activating Ripper mode is just an instant Delimb. And on no upgrade runs is when it can be actually useful, a lot more useful than what you're seeing here. Since I'm afraid of showcasing right now, I'm very, like, I'm maxed out. This is maxed out Raiden. It wouldn't be fair to showcase on these small enemies, but like, I can still try to if I want to. Let me just do this. And now I can slay through these enemies. Boom, boom, boom. but you still gotta be careful and you know, parry. See, like I'm still getting hit. It's not a rage. See, this is something I love. It's not a rage mode where you activate it and you have super armor and you can have all sorts of attacks on the enemy. No, you're still open to attacks. You still might get attacked a heavy aplenty. So you still have to be careful while using Ripper mode. There is such thing as getting creative as you use the Ripper mode. Like for example, before unleashing a powerful attack, activate the Ripper mode itself before you land that powerful attack. Because attack finishers are gonna be very, very lovely when you activate Ripper mode right before you drop them. Now the great thing about Ripper mode is that it's not just a rage mode that you activate and you can slice and dice through the enemies. As I'm demonstrating on this clip right now, you can do that on some enemies. But the Ripper mode has a lot more other things that you can also do with it, like some weird hit properties exclusive to it. For example, the air kick attack that this game has, basically this. I'm sorry, not this. This has good reach, but not the best reach. Now look at what I can do with the Ripper mode activated. Let me just get a little closer for demonstration's sake. Look at what I'm gonna do right now. Yes, that reached. There's this bug that happens with Ripper mode. I believe it was intentional because come on. It also looks very, very beautiful. Like the kick has to actually start going first, then you activate the rage mode or the Ripper mode. Then you go like flying towards the enemy like that. I just think it is a full-on range attack, like a infinite range, sorry. Just give me my thing back. Please give me spine. Thank you. This is the thing that you have seen used against Sam a lot to get into the air in combo mat videos, Like, I want to demonstrate on this guy right now. Watch. Did you see that? It connected. This is a really, really nice hit property that you can use. Is the air kick, but it has to start a little bit, then you activate it. That is basically it about the Ripper mode. I hope you learned something regarding the Ripper mode today, and let's move on to the next lesson. Secondary weapons. Now Metal Gear Rising has some very, very nice secondary weapons. They don't have a lot of moves that you can use, like they wouldn't be that ideally amazing for a weapon specialty run, but they are very, very good. Like we have the polearm with like the most attacks in the secondaries of Metal Gear Rising. No other secondary comes close to how many attacks this weapon has as like a secondary. If I had to briefly talk about the polearm and what it is useful for, it would be crowd control. At first when I played this game, it didn't like instantly get engraved in my mind that this is only good for crowd control. So I would use it for damage output as well, but it truly is not as good as your normal kicks when it comes to damage output. The polearm has a lot of attacks that are just very, very wide, and they hit the enemy a lot of times, giving the illusion that it deals some very nice damage. But it doesn't. However, it is a very, very nice setup tool, as you can have all sorts of weird things with it. Like for example, triangle, square, triangle gives you this cyclonic attack that by the end launches the enemies, which is very, very amazing. You can have this triangle, triangle, square, triangle, for some better damage than your average other moveset and all that, but I wouldn't prefer this over literally anything else you can do with a high frequency blade. It's just that it's good that this exists as well. The best thing regarding the polearm is that you can loop enemies with it with the air attack, as is demonstrated on the screen right now. The polearm makes easy work of them by simply slamming them down infinitely in a fast way. It is very, very good for looping enemies. This works on a lot of enemies, by the way, so just try it on as much enemies as you ever want. This works very, very nice on a lot of enemies, and it leaves you airborne, as you may know by the time, right now I've explained it enough times. I've nailed that point home across way too many times. You are left airborne after that. If you want to be on the ground, L2 and X, hold on. L2 and square actually for the polearm. If you want to, instantly be on the ground like this. The polearm has some other attacks that I wouldn't really define as something really useful. Like you have something like triangle, 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 square, and then triangle. which is a lot of attacks, but it doesn't really do you a lot of things. Like, why use that when you can literally go triangle, triangle, square, triangle? With Ripper mode, this thing rips a lot of enemies. It shreds a lot of enemies. But then again, with Ripper mode, you are slicing and dicing through literally every enemy in the game. Like, that's nothing. You're not doing anything different. You are slicing through every enemy. So might as well just use a better attack than that. Like, I get the argument of what if it deals some better damage. I get the argument of like everything you can think of. I get it, but like still there are some other attacks way safer to use than that long animation attack that I just showcased. It's just that the thing has some other attacks that I don't really think are that useful. Like, why would you use that when you have other better options that are even safer to execute? That's my point with the polearm. You see, like, there are other attacks like this if you want to turn into Dante from Devil May Cry 3. But I don't see the point in using them. And again, like, the argument of Ripper mode could come in ideally at any point. But even when that argument comes in, why would you do this, basically, that is uncancelable, unsafe, rather than just simply attacking with, like, triangle, cancel with the blade mode, like, even cancel with the jump, like, attack, jump, attack, you know, like this, for positioning. It works. And here's me looping this guy again. Point is, there are a lot of attacks you can use with the polearm. You don't need to use all of them, only use the most useful, like this one that you're seeing right now for controlling crowds, or, you know, this one for like launching a crowd and controlling them a little better, or this one for the best crowd controlling tool in the entire game. This deals some very, very plume damage area, or like some other attacks that I mentioned with the triangle, triangle, square, triangle, and you can basically keep on doing that for God knows how long. Like, if you equip it, you go triangle, triangle, square, triangle. You can go with the full triangle combo as well, but as I said, it's just, why would you do this rather than literally anything else you could do? Let's move on to the other secondary right now that is going to be a lot more gimmicky than this and a lot more limited than this at the same time. The Sai. Now, the Sai is a weapon that charges itself up, and by you wait a little bit, then it turns purple. By the time it turns purple, when you try to grab onto an enemy like this, you get teleported to him while he's stunned, like as if you hit him with an EMP. If you don't do that and you just go with the blue one, it's just a normal snatch where you go to the enemy but they're not stunned. A good demonstration would be on literally any enemy. It's especially good against flying enemies since you just literally lock yourself to them. Like, you go, you can attack them in the air like that. It's very, very, very beautiful. The main use would be, honestly, just closing in on an enemy, then repromoting them to death like this. Boom, bam, bam, bam. And you just eliminate them. This is especially good against bigger enemies. I wouldn't say use it against these guys. Like, it is what it is, however you want to use it. But I'm just saying, it's very good that it stuns the enemy like this. It even stuns some of the bosses, or like nearly every boss. The blue one is just a normal snatch onto the enemy like this. Boom. You just hit him. There's also a follow-up you can do with the Sai by pressing the button again after you kick the enemy. I know, very, very limited, but trust me, that is all you're gonna need with the Sai. Like, just boom, bam, like that. It is a simplistic weapon. That's the only move that it has. The rest of the moves that you have equipped while having it equipped is the high frequency blade moves, so make good use of that as well. That's about it. Now, what we have next is the PINCER that you get from Sundowner, the most racist individual in the entire game. So the PINCER is the most obvious damaging tool I think I've ever seen. Actually, this and the Barbarian Hammer from God of War 2 are like two of the most obvious damaging tools. I would say Cavalier from Devil May Cry 5 as well. Like, you look at these weapons and you instantly know, like, it instantly clicks with you, okay, this is gonna deal a lot of damage. Why? Because, well, look at these attacks. Boom, and then you charge the second one and you just feel it before it even releases, and he does 2 attacks, and then you charge the third one and he just does 3 amazing attacks that don't deal as much damage as the second attack. And I'll explain in a second. Like, this deals the most damage. Do not go for the third one as well. It's just a waste of time. It looks cool. It looks the most powerful attack, but like, it's not as powerful as the second one. There are normal attacks with this one as well, like this, which is a very nice launcher. It's a very, very sweet launcher. It's much better than your, like, let's say you want to go with like this. Please don't go with this. It's not the best option. Like, I much prefer going with this launcher. Peep, like that. Like 1, 2, like that. Or high time being the best. If you don't have high time or any other launcher, go with this. But back to the subject at hand. The pincer, or the scissors, or whatever you want to call them, has a very sweet launcher. It also deals nice damage.
My legs! You fuck! My legs!
The pincer also has a airdrop attack like this that just covers a long area. Like I jump from here, I can cover this much by just holding the analog forward. The pincer also has a different air attack in that you can hold it and Raiden does this. This is good if you're close by on the enemy's head and then you do it. I'm gonna demonstrate it on some of these enemies. Like I'm gonna do it on that flying enemy over there, see if I can land it. No, I'm not holding my breath too far to it, but like this is what it should look like. I'm gonna get shot down a lot because enemies are below me. But like the pincer in general is just a very, very nice weapon. I think I caught him with some of the attacks, but not all of them. The pincer in general is amazing. Like I would much prefer going with this as a drop attack. Like don't go with the other drop attack unless you're left alone with like one gecko, for example, and you want to damage it, because the geckos are tall enemies, right? Otherwise you just want to go with this drop attack or no drop attack as all, like at all. It's just safer to just go with some attacks that are just safe to land, honestly. Like something like, let me demonstrate, like this, for example. Do it, jump away. Do it, jump away. Do it, jump away. Doing your mom, doing your mom. It's an amazing weapon that instantly rips enemies to shreds without having to be in ripper mode. It's like, it's as if you're in ripper mode or blade mode. Now, as said prior, this second charged one is the most damaging attack of the entire weapon. Boom, boom. Destroyed. I'm gonna be demonstrating it in the next encounter as well after skipping this codec. But that is generally what you want to do. Like if you want to output the most damage, that second hit is ideally the best. Like trust me when I say this. Some people have recommended using this strat right here, where you do the first attack of the triangle, of the heavy attack. Like this, you dodge forward, then you charge this one instantly. Boom, boom. It is the most damaging attack in the game. Like if you're talking one attack dealing the most damage, that is the most damaging attack. I want to demonstrate a little bit more of how broken the pincer is when used correctly on some of these flying enemies. Let me just hit you, sir, like this. It has its merits, as I said. That attack has its uses sometimes. Boom. But I generally just prefer the normal drop attack. Let me just bait this flying enemy towards me, please. We don't want to fight him in the middle of a crowd like that. And I tried to parry him, I swear. Launch him to set him up. Then do the thing. It's simplistic, but it's so great. Like you launch him at first to set him up. Then you charge your attacks. Boom, as a first attack that delimbs the enemy. Whatever delimbing opportunities are left are surely gone with the second one. And if not with that, then surely with the third one. Who? Like this thing is broken, but not broken in the sense that you can just spam it everywhere. As I said, the launcher is a very nice setup first, then you can maybe follow it up with whatever you want to add after the launcher. You don't need ripper mode for this one, please. Ripper mode is overkill. So boom, and then you can follow it up with whatever you want, whether you want to charge it or not. Just set the enemy up first like this. A lot of people do this, dodge away, then do this. Or like some people don't even connect the first attack. Like what they do is, which I don't feel comfortable with, but this is what they do. And then instantly to the more powerful attack. Which is understandable why people do this, but it is what it is. The pincer is a very, very nice damaging tool. That's all you need to know. Use it against every enemy and every opportunity you get, since you are bound to wreck the enemies. This is such a Polnareff pose right here. Look at this. Look at that. Look at the technique. Anyways, let's move on to the next lesson right now. The sub-weapons. Your sub-weapons in this game are some very, very important tools. Like you have the barrel that you can use for hiding. You can even hold R2 and hold forward to get this. Which by the end, Raiden is going to be vomiting because of all the spinning. Like if you let go of it, Raiden starts vomiting. So don't keep on holding this so much. And you can even attack enemies with it. Let me just demonstrate it real quick. It's even disrespectful to try it out against these guys. See, like it doesn't do anything. It knocks down the other, this guy right here, these types of enemies. But that's the most I can give it. I'm even dead. But like, the point is not to showcase this silly thing that you can do with the barrel. Even though it could be useful in some other encounters. To, you know, take you back to the days of Metal Gear Solid 4 if you want to. The sub-weapons that you have are all useful. The cardboard box, of course. What a cute thing. You're not detected while it's active. The 3D thing. You throw it, some enemies get lured towards it because this hot babe is in here, which is my type of rain. I am going to be demonstrating an example on the screen right now where I lure this enemy away from the view of the battlefield. I take out the other enemies via stealth, then I take him out or something like that. Or there's this example right here where I lure one of these, you know, grunts to the outside of the arena just to take him out safely to make the encounter after safer for myself. I'm gonna be honest, not the safest tool to use, but it is what it is. Now you also have electromagnetic grenade, which is basically your EMP. This is very, very, very useful against literally every enemy you can think of. You just throw it towards the enemy, it instantly explodes, and you can attack the stunned enemy. It's very, very useful. The Psy has the same function. You know, when you latch yourself onto an enemy, very, very useful. Jamming grenade is not something I'm really willing to dive deep into. Essentially, it is just for jamming electronics. It's basically your shaft grenade from the old Metal Gear Solid series. I'm not gonna dive that deep into this one since it's not really that useful in my opinion. The red phosphorus grenade, though, is a smoke grenade that can get you back into the stealth game pretty quickly, as you can see, like right this. You're kind of back into the stealth mode. Of course, these things can still detect you since they're robots and whatnot.
Enemy behind you.
But it is very, very good, honestly. The smoke grenade is good. It's not like the other grenade where you just do nothing, basically. And just get attacked by a lot of other enemies. This one is very, very good. It's very important. And I'm going to move on to the other sub-weapon after I die right now. Okay, I didn't die. The grenade is very, very basic. Boom. It is good for crowd control, though. Like, if you have a bunch of these guys, while they're, of course, still functional, not like this. You can throw one of these into the crowd, throw another into the crowd when you're safe, throw another into the crowd if you're feeling very generous, throw a fifth one onto him. This guy is very, very stubborn. But like, you get the point of grenades. Grenades are very basic. They're not gonna deal the best of damage, but they are useful. The next sub-weapon we have the surface-to-air homing missile. This one is a very nice lock-on type of rocket launcher. Like, let me demonstrate it on the enemies right now since we're on this level as well. Getting this footage, this demonstration is pretty much hell. This guy, shoot, and it just travels towards him and kills him. And again, actually I missed that last one. Hold on, let me just peep. And that's that. I'm intentionally making this harder on myself by manually aiming and then shooting, by the way, if you haven't noticed. Thing is, it's so great that this one locks onto the enemy. Like I'm just gonna shoot it normally and it locks onto the enemy. Is very beautiful. The next one I can demonstrate right now is the rocket launcher. Except it doesn't have the lock on. And it has one of the most satisfying reload animations. But you get the point. Sub-weapons are very good. They have their time in every encounter. And they feed into the resource management that I talked about in the resource management segment. I don't want to dive deeper again into how and where you want to, you know, have your resource management. I showed my examples in the resource management part of this combat guide. So now I'm gonna move on finally to something else that you saw me use throughout the you know, getting the demonstration for the sub-weapons, and is that you can quickly throw the sub-weapons. Like for example, let's say you have this equipped. You don't want to go like this. This takes long. This is also choppy, by the way. Like sometimes, look what happens when you throw it to the wall. It can be extremely frustrating when you want to do it like this. You're thinking you gotta throw it in front of the gate, just for it to hit the wall and land right in Alaska or something. Like, the better way is that you can throw it quickly like this. This is much better. Just tap L1. Don't hold L1. This goes for the EMP that you can quickly throw out in the middle of combat. Much more fluid and much better and much faster. And even for the homing missile that you want to use. First of all, this is very useful for both this way and the other way as well. But the other way is good as well. Like, just boom. It like automatically homes in on the enemy, except on a lesser extent. Like, let's say that's the enemy you're locked into. Hold on, let me just demonstrate without getting destroyed. Boom. It does lock onto the enemy, but to a lesser extent. It's not as much as the manual aiming. The RPG does not lock onto the enemy. Like, it doesn't home onto the enemy, sorry. It does lock onto the enemy, it just doesn't home. And you get the point, basically, of sub-weapons being quickly used. This is a way to quickly use the sub-weapons that I don't think it is explained by the game. Which I always hate it when games don't explain their mechanics, but it is what it is. The point has been sent across, I hope. It is clear right now. Enemy trip. Tripping enemies. So tripping enemies is not something so vital. It's just something that I ultimately have to talk about this, since it is a mechanic in the game, it is a hit property in the game, so why not mention it? Enemy tripping happens when you tackle an enemy, except this guy loves blocking today, of course. It happens by either doing that or any attack that is lowered, like, I'm gonna demonstrate something else. Triangle, square. Triangle, pause, square trips every enemy. Not every, but like enemies that are open to be tripped, like this guy right here. There's another way of tripping enemies. This way. Except he blocked it back there, but like, it is another way you can trip enemies, like that. That's basically tripping enemies, and it works on this guy, and you can loop him infinitely. It deals not so good of a damage, and this way of tripping the enemy is not the best. Like, as a whole, it is not the best way you can trip these guys. Like, tackling would be better, but like, I guess it is the best way to trip that specific enemy that you saw me fight back there. Since they love to block, they're very annoying with their blocking, but tripping in general is a concept in this game, as you saw me do it with a lot of other enemies using the tackle mechanic. It is very nice to know about. As I said, very niche, but it's something that I felt like mentioning. Let's move on to the next and last lesson regarding your offensive approach. Quickswap. Now, in Metal Gear Rising, there is no such thing as swapping your weapon, you know, quickly and all that. What this lesson is about is mainly how to pull up this menu as fast as possible in the middle of combat, or maybe not in the middle of combat. Maybe we want it in a panic moment like this, where you just pull it up and you keep the pace after you exit it. So early on in the blade mode category, very early in the video, I taught how you can just cancel and then enter this menu way too quickly. See how quickly I entered that and swapped to the pincer? So like, say for example, you were doing this, then you can instantly access the polearm. Then you can do this, then you can instantly access the sai. So on. I did explain this in the blade mode lesson, and now I explained it again. It's very good to just, you know, do it by blade mode cancel and then mash the D-pad to enter this. Now there are other ways to access this menu quickly, and it's by sprinting away, jump sprinting, letting go of the sprint in the air, and then mashing D-pad. So by the time you land, you access the menu again, because you can only access the menu while standing still, while walking, or while normally running. You can't access it while sprinting. This lesson I'm teaching right now, the new one, is sprinting. You jump, let go, sprint, mash the D-pad, and that's how you access it. It's good since, like, when you restart the check mode, the game does not allow you to enter this menu instantly. So what you do is you sprint, jump, sprint, let go, sprint, and then you do this. You swap, and then you continue with the game. See how you keep your pace? It doesn't matter how many times you do it, what you do. You can do it as much as you can to whatever you want. It is a thing of beauty, so make sure to put it to good use. And that is about it for the offensive options. The lessons for the offensive options are officially done. What I'm going to be explaining from here on out is going to be some other things that are going to be useful for your offensive options, for your in-game game design options, your defensive options. These are just going to be, you know, just niche things, again, that I'm going to be explaining outside of the offensive options, but they could be feeding into the offensive options. For now, we are officially done with your offensive options. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move to the next set of lessons, which revolves around room tools. Now, this is a lesson that I had in the God of War Trilogy combat guide as well. It's essentially using the room's tools to your best advantage. You know, you find a safe spot, you want to use it to your best interest. You find some fire hydrants that can trivialize an entire encounter, as you may see on the screen right now. Do use it as best as you can. Like, I used it right here to completely trivialize this encounter that would have taken far longer if I just didn't pull this short little trick right here, which I know you can do with the smoke grenade as well, but I'm just saying, one day you may find yourself not able to use sub-weapons. Then what? Then you have this fire hydrant right here to save the entirety of the encounter from being a clusterfuck, because it can actually turn into a clusterfuck if it wants to. Room tools in general are just a thing in a lot of action games. It's a type of platform you can get on to safely take out the enemies, as you can see on the screen right now, or a thing in the room, some object in the room you can interact with. Like even if it's just it revolves around parkouring around the arena. Do that if you can actually, you know, if it is available in the encounter, as you see right here. There are segments where you can actually skip encounters in this game, and it is totally up to you to do it. Like hell, you can even skip these two grads that you're seeing me fight right here in this mission by simply climbing up the stairs on the left and just keep on going forward, and you pretty much skip an entire fight against two grad enemies. You can skip encounters in this game however you see fit. Not every encounter, of course, but a lot of encounters are actually skippable, and you can use that to your advantage in some ways. Now, if I wanted to put an emphasis on the safe spots that you can use in encounters, do make sure to use those to have some actual reasonably difficult encounters rather than, you know, broken encounters where you can't even make out what's happening anymore at a certain point. Like, for example, this encounter in the sewers right here. I don't take it like face off first. Like, I don't go in just in the middle of the encounter and battling it out. No. I first draw the dwarf geckos into the corner I came from to eliminate them safely. Then I get close and I still do not fight. I sprint to the very end of the arena. There is where I decide to fight and pick apart the enemies one by one. It might have been done in a very messy way in the showcase that I'm putting on right now, but that's because Metal Gear Rising is very, very hard to make a combat guide for. I'm really sorry, and I'm trying my best. You get the point. It is about finding the right spot, finding the right position where you want to fight the enemies at, rather than just going nuts to the wall in the middle of the encounter, parrying left and right, getting hit left and right. There's going to be a lot of messiness in the encounter. Not that there's anything wrong with the encounter getting messy in Metal Gear Rising, as the game is designed to be explosive, but we're gonna want control in this situation right here with the safe places and the encounters and all that. This is why I wanted to put a huger, bigger emphasis on this part of the lesson of room tools. You just need to learn to find your safe spots in a lot of the encounters. This comes with a lot of replays. It comes with a lot of restarts for the encounters. So feel free to actually get into the encounters and find your personal safe spot. There are situations where you can just simply retreat from an encounter, and you never know how large an encounter is. Like, the encounter can be way too big. Like, for example, after breaking this gate right here in R01, like, these enemies come rushing towards you, but what you can do is you can retreat all the way back to before the chopper fight, and there you can just de-aggro all of them and approach them and fight them, or even take them on via stealth. You never know. do experiment as much as you can, because this game is an ocean when it comes to these types of things, these types of gimmicks in the encounters, and I just can't get enough of them. So this was kind of about it for the room tools. One quick thing I wanted to remind you guys about, which I should talk about more in the enemy wiki that is going to be coming out, you know, not after this lesson, after the one after, and it's going to be these red rockets that you're going to see. These can also be considered room tools that you can use for your advantage. Hell, we're looking at this double grad boss fight right here that shoots red rockets at you that you can break for nano paste, you know, again feeding into the room tools lesson that we're teaching right here. But look at the arena at the start. You can use these fiery things and launch them with the tackle, or, you know, slice through them with your light sprint attacks. And I'm just saying, I can't really put this into words. This is like one of these things that I can't put to words. The more experience you have with the game, the more you're gonna come to understand me. Just make sure to use the environment around you. The combat is not as simple as you and the enemy. The whole environment around you feeds into the combat of Metal Gear Rising. This can go a long way with some encounters right here, where you can break the pillar to drop the grad, or just keep on fighting the enemies down below, then break the pillar and drop the grad to fight them 1v1. The sky's the limit with Metal Gear Rising. Have all the fun you want to have. I just gave you some examples. You can go ahead and, you know, try out with some other encounters here and there, because I'd like to keep some of the fun for you guys to figure out. And yeah, I guess that was about it for the room tools. I'm going to be touching on the red rockets that give nano paste when you break them later on with the Grad's enemy wiki, so stay tuned to that. For now, let's move on to the next lesson. This is going to be the spawn rules. The idea of spawn rules is a thing in a lot of action games. Usually in God of War, it is where you eliminate some enemies carefully to spawn in the next wave of enemies, but you don't totally eliminate every single enemy with one swoop attack and just to spawn in 50 unfavorable enemies that are going to be spawning. No. See, spawn rules happen in Metal Gear Rising in a very special way, so you need to kind of pay attention for this lesson right here. Remember this encounter right here with the, you know, the whole stealth approach that I did, and how I went a little further to spawn in the dogs, then retreated and the Mastiffs weren't aggro? This is basically that lesson 101. You can have that in many other encounters, like, you know, you don't want to actually spawn in all the enemies that are in the encounter yet, basically, like this encounter right here in the elevator. I try my best to not eliminate the flying enemies, these flying fodders in the air. You may be saying, okay, they're easy to eliminate, you just air kick them, then you blade mode them, and that's about it for them, they're dead. But like, here's where you're missing the point. I do not want to eliminate these guys, because if I do, 2 Mastiffs will be spawning in. Now, fighting 2 Mastiffs in a small elevator like this with a hammerhead right in the middle, it's not gonna be a fun time. Trust me, it's gonna be very, very messy, unless you get some favorable plays from the Mastiffs where they try to do the drop kick, you parry them, you do some playful ripper mode here and there after parrying them, you know, yada yada. But my favorable approach is to crack down the encounter in half, basically. What I love doing in Metal Gear Rising, and basically in every other action game I play, is experiment with the encounter's spawn rules. What do I have to do to spawn the next wave of enemies? You saw this at the first encounter I showcased at the start of the video, which we're gonna come back to by the end of the video to also explain the spawn rules. But some stuff regarding the spawn rules happened in that encounter as well. We're gonna talk about it later. What I'm doing is I'm evading left and right, trying my best for the elevator to reach the top, then I can spawn in the Mastiffs however I want, because I can, by that point, isolate them to a certain spot and fight them safely, rather than fight them here in an encounter that is so cramped that it's gonna get just very, very difficult, and it's not gonna look very beautiful on my part. You know, we gotta represent the company here. We can't take 50 hits by a Mastiff, by 2 Mastiffs if things go wrong, and the hammerhead. This is why you see me fighting them in a much more formal way right now. I could put on a suit and fight them right here in this spot without having the care of, you know, yo, what if I get attacked from off screen? What if I get attacked? What if the camera turns in a very, very unfavorable way? Which is a thing. The camera generally just sucks in this game, but you have to put up with it, and you have to get good to a point, to a certain point. You have to get good to the point where you actually conquer the camera. By that point, the camera is not gonna act fuzzy. You're gonna know your positioning. You're gonna know where to stand, not to stand against walls, and yada yada. Basically, this was it for the lesson that I'm explaining right here, the spawn rules. I'm gonna come back to this by the end of the video where I showcase the first, starting encounter that I showed in this video. But this is basically the spawn rules on this game. You need to know which enemy to kill to spawn the next enemy, and you need to know when to do it safely and be prepared for the next wave that comes in. Because encounters are not just isolation, you know, encounters are not just, hey, beat 3 of these enemies in front of you and then the encounter is over. No. Most of the time in Metal Gear Rising, you're gonna beat a crowd of enemies and then some other crowd joins in as a second wave. So you need to keep that second wave in mind with enough replays and restarts to your encounters. That was about it for the spawn rule lessons, and I hope you guys learned about it right now, and I hope you guys, you know, kind of experiment more and more with the game and learn its spawn rules. But now, we are done with that lesson. We are done with all the lessons, actually. Now we reach a point where we talk about the enemy wiki. Now, this is something I did for God of War Trilogy guide as well. It kind of dragged on way too long there since it was 3 games, but in here we should be good. This is going to be a segment in the video where I explain nearly every enemy in the game. Not totally every enemy, because there are some reskins here and there. This is going to be a point where I'm going to be explaining every enemy in the game and the best approach towards them, but there's a catch to this segment in the video. I'm not going to be explaining some of the things that are widely known. For example, using an EMP on a crowd of fodder enemies is bound to be good. Using an EMP on a crowd of raptors is bound to be amazing. Or, you know, using Ripper mode, or using whatever, truly. Using the PINCER, for example. Like in the lessons that I'm going to be teaching right now, I doubt I'm ever going to be using the PINCER to showcase a strat on an enemy. Don't expect that, please. I am going to be showcasing some stuff that you may or may not know. Some obscure things you may not know, which I'm sure, like, some of these things right here, I'm sure there are like 1 or 2 strats that you don't know. I'm sure there are some strats that even if you're an experienced player, you may not truly know. Or if you know, kudos to you. I'm just trying to explain the best way to deal with every enemy in the game. Let's just start the lesson. Then you'll know what I mean in just a minute. Now, to start off the enemy wiki, we're going to have to talk about the fodders first, of course. Now, the fodder type enemies in Metal Gear Rising are still powerful enemies, but there is something about them that you're gonna have to learn right now, or you'll learn throughout playing the game. And is that blade mode can easily cut through them and even reveal their vital spots without having, you know, without the need to stun them or anything. You just activate the blade mode and slice through them without, you know, any need to stun them at first, you know, get blue parts of them to delimb them. No, you want to delimb one of these guys, you just do it. And here's this right here, which you can grab them, which I'm going to get to right now in just a second. You do not want to be doing this against fodders. I'm going to explain just right now in a second. Okay, let me skip through. Now, something else I wanted to talk about regarding the fodder is what you do usually after parrying them. As an unexperienced player, what you do after parrying them is naturally trying to grab them. Since the game gives you a prompt that you can, you can grab them. You have a full fuel bar. After parrying them, you can grab them. See, like, as an unexperienced player, you would do this and then grab this guy to finish him off, and then you even have the chance of going back and grabbing the other one right next to him as well. Now, here's where your Kojima genius can shine the brightest, and actually, instead of grabbing one of them to slowly take them out, what you do is something else. Like, instead of going like this, which can be good, hey, you're eliminating the enemy. What could be better than eliminating the enemy via the grab, correct? Wrong. Now here's where your official Kojima genius can shine. I'm draining my fuel all the way so that I can demonstrate this next bit. Like right now, if I do this to fodder enemies, they're not gonna be delimbed, correct? Except after you parry, Zandatsu automatically activates, so you don't need fuel to execute this one swoop motion that I'm about to showcase right now. So what you do right now with your Kojima genius is after you parry, you enter this Zandatsu right here, and you can eliminate multiple enemies with the parry, rather than grabbing one of them at a time. This can be demonstrated a little better if I can just restart it right now. There you go. And so easily you cut through all of them, like you even cut through all of their vital signs if you want to. It is the optimal way to deal with fodders after you parry them. That was it for the fodder enemies. Let's move on to the grunt version of these fodder types, like these soldiers, but the grunt version, the one that is heavier right now. Let's move on. So now we make it to the point where we fight these types of grunts. They are the same soldiers, but they have a lot of armor. They don't allow you to tackle them. They don't allow you to do a lot of things. They're very, very annoying. Now here's where the drop attack that we explained in your offensive option comes into play as a first thing. These enemies are going to be the most interesting in this enemy wiki, as I have a lot of things to showcase. So drop attacks, loop them. That's the ideal way to even do crowd control against a bunch of these guys. But what a lot of people don't know is that you can do a really sweet thing to lift them back up into the air and basically just put them in an infinite. So let's say I do this, then I attack. Look at what happens when I mash attack after I drop. Boom, he's back to the air. Boom, 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 bam, 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 boom. Did you see that? This is generally a very nice loop that you can try out. There's also another way to deal with them after you slam them down with the air drop attack, but for now, this is the first way. I felt like explaining it. Here it is again. Your last attack lifts him to the air. So from there on, you can do whatever you want with the enemy, ideally. Like again, here we are again. Let me just do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then he's in the air. Boom, 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 and you kill him, whatever. That is the first way to deal with these guys in the most beautiful way. I love this way. Not a lot of people showcase it, but I felt like showcasing it right now. Let's move on to the next information or, iceberg type thing or info about this grunt type enemy. Now, anyways, this next way is also having to do with him being in a juggle state, or i.e. you have to drop him first. So let's drop him to showcase it. So what you do is a different type of combo this time. After you drop him, triangle, triangle, square, triangle, triangle. Let me just showcase one more time. Triangle, triangle, square, triangle, cancel it. Triangle, triangle, square, triangle, cancel it. Triangle, triangle, square, triangle. Heavy, heavy, light, heavy. This basically keeps him in a loop, as you saw me do back there, and it basically destroys him. It's also a very beautiful one. I just prefer this one because I believe I came up with this one where I lift him with this and then I can go to town with him. And it's also beautiful when you juggle him with this, but like, we're not here to talk about combo mat stuff. As I said at the start of the video, this video might still help you get your combo mat stuff in the game. Anyways, let's move on to the next piece of encyclopedia about this fodder, or this grunt fodder, I should call him. Now, this next one that I'm about to showcase is one that I doubt a lot of people know about. So, these guys do not really allow you to tackle them so easily, especially this advanced version right here. This guy does not allow you to tackle him. So, there's something very beautiful you can do if you ever see them blocking your tackle, which is already a crime against humanity. The tackle is one of the best attacks. Unfortunately, a lot of enemies just block it. So here's this is very interesting. Not a lot of people know about this. So after you do it, you enter sword mode, you slash at his wrist. Hold on, I failed to do it there. You slash at his wrist and it disarms him and it actually gets him in a stunned state. So like right now you can launch him and do all sorts of unholy amount of things to him, however you see fit. This is very interesting. Like I learned this from my friend Dante. He taught me about this. It is interesting how you can do this. He's literally stunned. Like, if you have a full fuel gauge, you can just grab him and kill him. Very interesting. I hope this kind of helped you guys with these very heavy versions of the grunt fodder, since these guys love to block your tackle. But it is just very interesting. And this was basically it. As I said, this is the enemy that is very interesting to showcase in this enemy wiki. I had a lot of fun even showcasing it here, as it was easy to record. It's a rare thing when recording footage in this game for a combat guide for it to be easy. But let's stop rambling. Let's move on to the next enemy that I'm going to talk about right now, which is flying fodder enemies. You already know what goes for these guys, but I have to mention it. So flying enemies have been explained throughout this video on what you should do to them, which is get in their faces and blade mode them basically like this. Since blade moding these guys is an instant delimb, just like the normal fodder enemies that you see. But I had to make it in the enemy wiki as well, since it is the most important thing regarding flying enemies. This happens with literally every flying enemy other than the chopper, which we'll get to the chopper in a bit, but like for now, just know that the best way to deal with these guys is to get in their faces and blade moding them. You can also, do this with the sai. I more so prefer the actual kick that you saw me do back there rather than the sai. The sai is amazing, honestly. Just the fact that you can do all of this with it, which I talked about in the sai segment of this video. But yeah, you can use the sai to do the same effect on these enemies. The flying enemies, not this enemy, but yeah. Let's move on to the next setup enemy. The next enemy we have this guy, the hammer guy, or the hammerhead, whatever he's called. Now I can very simply say just use the pincer from afar and that will be the most optimal thing, which is valid, but as I said, I'm not gonna be too on the nose with this enemy wiki. So, the polearm. What can we do with the polearm? You can launch this guy and infinitely wreck his shit with the polearm. Let me just bait some of his attacks first. You need to hit him like this, you know, at the right time with the light attack. Then he gets launched. I'm gonna try it again, like after he's done. Heavy, heavy, light, heavy. Okay, Raiden, you can stop now. Raiden. Raiden. Now, something else I can teach about hammerheads is that their attacks are very, very slow. God, I love how the way his hammer looks. Look at that, how it spins and all that. These guys are very, very heavy grunts. Like, you're better off just leaving them to the end of the encounter. Take care of every enemy, then resort to taking them out. Like, you can do some crowd controlling shenanigans on them. Like, you know, the polearm, the air attack, the drop attack of the polearm, ideally kind of wrecks the shit up every enemy in this game. Like, look at this. Let me just catch him in a nicer loop first. See? And you can basically just keep on repeating it. But like generally these guys are slow. You can just bait their attacks, every attack, and it takes years for them to drop it. Like look at this. See, every attack, even normal attacks that you're supposed to block are very slow. That's about all I can say about the hammerheads. There are other stuff that are very, very obvious, but I expect you to use them. Like, you know, you just, we all know you can just do, you know, the little Power Ranger attack. But I'm not gonna talk about that. So yeah, let's move on to the next enemy. Now right now up next we have Grads, and you already see what's going on and what the idea is to approaching Grads. You might have noticed how I approached them in a sideways type of way, like this basically. I approached them but on the side and then ended with a tackle. That is the most important lesson I can ever give about the Grads, is to approach them in a sideways manner. Let me switch my blade to something that doesn't totally wreck the enemy, because I never used the Muramasa. I just wanted to quickly get here. Now when you see red rockets flying your way, what I love doing is baiting them like this, then I get into the chasing position and start wanting to break them. Breaking them gives you nano paste, which is amazing. It's always great to have more healing items. And again, I say close in with the tackle because you actually have iframes with the tackle, and that way you have a higher chance of getting the enemy or the Grad to try to... Here's me baiting these things again. Now again, if the Grad itself breaks the red rocket, you don't get the nano paste. So here's me approaching sideways again to end it with a tackle at the perfect time. Since the tackle gives you iframes, you have a better chance of, you know, not taking a hit. There are other ways to approach the Grad from afar, and it's basically just light attacks like this to close the distance. But it can be dangerous if you're not really experienced very much. So I recommend approaching them like this, as like a 1 p.m., 1 o'clock type of approach. Then ending it with a tackle, and then you have a high chance of getting in their faces. Hell, air attacks to attack the irons is also good, but like not that relevant in my opinion. I just try to attack them however I want. You can approach them at an 11 o'clock angle as well, as I did back there. Here's again, like this. Never approach him head on, since he doesn't just fire bullets. The Grad usually fires rockets as well, which is not a fun time. One thing else I want to point out about the Grads, which doesn't really have a lot of, you know, relevancy, since you're gonna fight them anyhow, but like, one thing I want to make clear about these Grads, these are not the same Grads you fight at the end of mission 2. Those were boss fight Grads, which one of them is the boss fight Grad, the other is the same aggro as the boss fight Grad, but not the same HP. So one thing very, very important, these are just normal Grad enemies. There are normal Grad enemies and boss Grad enemies. Just wanted to get that out of the way before moving on to the next enemy. So let us move on to the next enemy actually right now. Mastiff. Now one very, very interesting about the Mastiff that I haven't showed throughout the video, I decided to save it for the enemy wiki, is that you can actually launch these guys. So like after you parry, they tend to block a lot of times. It's not every time, but it is a lot of times. So like, look what I'm gonna do now after I parry him. And look what he's gonna do. These guys are so cracked that they parry your parry. Then you can launch them with this. See that? It's very, very interesting. It's also very unexpected. You don't expect to be able to launch a giant enemy like the Mastiff, but you actually can. You are, of course, open to do whatever you want with them after you launch them. Just know that it's very, very useful, obviously, because you can just simply loop the Mastiff. Like, let me try it one more time with any attack. The simple fact that you can launch them, or the simple fact that they parry your parry, is interesting. You can launch them with normal attacks as well, but it's just mostly confirmed when you get them to parry you. This is very, very important about the Mastiff. Decided to save it for the enemy wiki, but there are some other things. Let's just remind you guys of the other useful things against the Mastiff. I explained this in the Psi part of this guide. How you can just loop a lot of enemies, basically. By the time he recovers, I can just attack him once again. It is very, very interesting for you to know. And now what's left of this Mastiff wiki, the rest is just some clear stuff. What's left is, again, to remind you guys that you can air jump his grabs, or most of his normal attacks as well, which happens with a lot of enemies as well, but just it's very important with the Mastiff since he loves to grab a lot. Now, let's remind you guys again as well, it's not the sprint jump, it's the normal jump, and you press it as much as you can and press triangle to gain as much height as you can. That is very, very important. So that's about it. That's about what I can teach regarding the Mastiff. Let's move on to the next enemy. Now the next enemy on the list is gonna be none other than the Gecko, the dummy thick Gecko that got introduced in Metal Gear Solid 4. So the Geckos obviously have a very, very known strat on how to deal with them, which is basically baiting their long range rush attack. That one right there, the one Gecko that is doing it. I'm gonna try to demonstrate it one more time real quick right here. Just block it. What you do after block it is mash triangle. When you have full on fuel, you can just easily grab them after you do your deed with them. This is a well-known one. It's very, very easily explained in the game. It's very easily showed in the game. There is another way to deal with them though, and it's by baiting again, but this time not their attack that you saw back there. It's another type of attack that you bait this time. Let me just get rid of this one. So there's another type of baiting that you can do, and it's baiting one of its stomps. You're gonna see it in just a minute. So it does a very long animation stomp that you can easily bait. I'm trying to bait it right now. It's being stubborn. That stomp right there. Except sometimes the leg, the dummy thick leg that the Gecko has, gets stuck to the ground, and then you can go close and press circle. Raiden gets on top of their heads and like this basically. You mash triangle, the heavy attack. So you just gotta do this twice to get the best of the Gecko. So like, it's gonna do it a second time. It's pretty easy. You just bait the attack from up close and retreat. Sometimes it does the stomp, but the leg does not get stuck to the ground, which is sad cringe, but like, most of the time you get this right here. And that's about it for the Gecko. Like, not a lot of things, since you can deal with the Gecko in a lot of ways, but like this and the other bait that you saw from a long range, these two are very well known in the community, so do make sure to use them to your best advantage. That's about it for the Gecko. Let's move on to the next enemy. Now the next enemy, we got the Chopper, and this is not really that deep of an enemy. I don't really have to explain it a lot. You basically just go up to its face and start attacking it. You can use your rockets at it. You can use anything at it. Most of the time where you fight the Choppers, it's just going to be gimmicky encounters. So at one point in mission 1, you even fight it as a boss fight. Pretty straightforward. You can even use the Psi on it to stun it and then get up to its face and attack it. You can use however tools you want. Not a lot of, deep, intricate things I can talk about with the Chopper, truly. Besides the Psi, but like, that can be for nearly every enemy, or actually the whole entire enemy roster, so. Not a lot to talk about with the Chopper. That's about it. What you know about it is the full extent that I know about it as well, so no point in trying to dig anything further than this. Fenrir. Now, one thing I can teach about the dogs is learn their encounters and where they spawn. Like, for example, this encounter, I know where the dogs spawn. And so what I do is some Ripper mode shenanigans on the dogs. Now, the problem is I'm still gonna get caught by some of them. But notice how well I handled it back there. The problem with dogs that I have in this game is that they really don't give you a chance to react. They do a lot of things, like a single dog, which they're called Fenrir, I believe. They have a chance to do a lot of things. But I just taught you what to do with the polearm back there. I know it's way too on the nose, like I know it sounds like just Ripper mode, bro, but it's more than that. Come on, these dogs are annoying. They're hella annoying. So what you do when you're left with one dog is this, basically. This pretty much loops the dog if you're in a 1v1 situation with him. This loops the, the big dog boss fight, Sam's wolf, basically. It's a pretty nice one, I can say, but there's something else you can do against them. Now, while I'm at it, as I'm gonna try to demonstrate what to do, something else you can do against the dogs that can be fruitful, useful, whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. So first, let me it's a good chance to demonstrate this way of takedown, which you can do like this as well, with a bunch of blade mode cancels. See, they just jump in out of nowhere. That's what I hate about them the most. But they're manageable to an extent. When they're around other enemies is where they truly become annoying. But anyways, something else that can be good against the dogs is the tackle. It's like, boom. We talked about the enemies tripping in one of the lessons, and these are one of the enemies that actually trip. This dog is the one thing that got me tripping. Yeah, some of the lessons you learn can be applicable on the dogs. Like, not all, sadly, but like the one that I taught just now, this is the best. I've seen it being done with a lot of boss fight videos for Metal Gear Rising. It is a very safe way to take out the dogs, so yeah, that's about it for the dogs, honestly. Let's move on to the next enemy. Vodomjerka. Now, the name of this enemy is kind of weird. I just learned it from the Wiki of Metal Gear Rising, but apparently that's their name. So what I do is not explaining the obvious, which is the stealth approach to these guys. I'm going to be explaining something else, which is baiting their long range attack and then air parrying it. Like this, boom, and then I grab them, and then they're done. The amount of times you meet these guys is very little in the game, but like I have to explain it anyhow. You can take them all out via stealth in this arena and in any arena you meet them, truly. But like as we said, we're not stating the obvious. Don't be close by to them. They have a lot of moves that might catch you slipping, so you stay from this range. You wait for that attack. If you parry it, you parry it. If you don't, you block it. If you're like a little early with your blocking inputs, it is what it is. However, I'm going to be finishing this entire encounter with this baiting long range attack of mine, because it's very, very good. Now, I say air parry because I'm going to showcase what happens with a ground parry. Here's me parrying on the ground as you saw me do back there, and it also whiffed the enemy. The thing about the air parries on these guys that Raiden lunges himself forward, which helps with the positioning. The attack actually connects. The parry attack itself, the slash, connects. If you do it the normal way, a lot of times it will whiff. See how it whiffed even there? So I prefer air parry, especially on these guys, because you see, like, Raiden's parry actually connects. It's actually confirmed that his parry connects. That's about the Vodomjerka that you needed to learn today. Let's move on to the next enemy. Raptors. Now, Raptors truly confuse me in this combat guide as to what can I even talk about when it comes to enemy weaknesses to talk about here, because the obvious, as I said, I hate stating the obvious. I even said it at the start of this lesson. The EMP grenades do a number on these guys, but there is something else that is worth mentioning, and it's that you can catch these guys as they're flying towards you, and you can actually get them in a juggle state. So like, let's say you catch one of them jumping. See how that guy got juggled? It is a very, very messy showcase, but I'm sure you saw this guy get juggled as I hit him in the air. Now, another thing might sound obvious, but it's not, because it's kind of exclusive to the Raptors, and it's that parrying them, even on very hard difficulty, gives the effect of Revengeance difficulty. So like, let's say I'm gonna parry one of these guys right now. Hold on, let me just showcase it. It's as if you parried them on Revengeance difficulty, because you get them actually stunned and you can grab them. I'm gonna try to showcase it without getting too explosive on the screen. There, I did it, and then I can grab. It is a weird effect that I believe goes only for the Raptors when it comes to Grunt type enemies. But it is certainly a thing. Like, you parry them and they get stunned as if it's on Revengeance difficulty, which I don't know if it's a bug that made it into the final game or what. But it is generally a thing. There's also something else against these guys that can prove a little useful if you're crowded against them, and it's air blocking. You know, over there I did an air parry accidentally, but air blocking generally is good since it pushes you away from them because they come in groups and it's not fun when you get grouped up with these guys. The rest about these enemies, you already know it. I said I'm not going to be talking about the obvious, which is EMP, but I had to talk about another obvious, which is parrying them. I can't be going around saying just parry them, bro, when it can work for literally every other enemy, but this is a special case where the enemy gets actually stunned as if it's Revengeance difficulty. I'm gonna try to replicate it one more time. Of course, like the side does a number on them, the EMPs do a number on them, but this actually instantly getting them to this, grab state is very, very interesting. That's about it for the Raptors. That's all I can teach about the Raptors. The rest is just basic stuff you need to learn on your own. They're not really anything worth teaching. EMPs, Psi, you know of that. Let's move on. That's about it for the enemy wiki for Metal Gear Rising. Just a quickie wiki that I decided to include at the end of the video, just for you guys to get some idea on how to approach some of the enemies in the game. We went through all the enemies, not all the reskins, but I did go through a lot of the enemy types that you come across in the game, and I hope it kind of helped you guys dealing with the enemies whenever you want to go and play the game for mastery. Now let's move on to one last quest that we have to do on this video, and it is watching the starting encounter that we saw at the start of the video. I showcased that encounter in the flower tree. This time we're gonna look at it now with the lens that we have right now after learning everything we learned throughout the combat guide. Of course, this combat guide is not gonna be done with like one view of the combat guide. You're gonna have to return back to it to confirm some strats. You're gonna have to ask me some questions in the comment. I will gladly help and reply in the comments, so don't you worry about that. But now let's have a quick look at the encounter that we saw at the start of the video and see the strats that were used in that encounter. So to start off, the first thing you ever notice is the enemy prioritization. There are 2 rocket guys and 1 Grunt Fodder. What I do is of course target them with the tackle into the blade mode that we explained at the start of the video. Then I approach the other enemy, and this again feeds into the enemy prioritization, and what we do is eliminate him. Now that we're left in a 1v1 situation against this type of Grunt Fodder, we do the drop attack shenanigans on him. I try to do it here, but it doesn't work in the first try. It surely works in the second try. What I do is, again, the drop attack into the air attacks. Last attack launches him. I just keep on with my attacks. I activate the Ripper mode for the last one to kill him in a swoop motion. I then come back instantly, and I have all of this planned out. I did not forget that these guys spawn in right after. 2 rocket guys spawn in. I take out the first one. I bait the enemies that spawn in after I take out the first one. These enemies right ahead of me right now, these guys. And I'm still having my focus on the guy with the rocket, like this. I eliminate him. The next lesson that we're going to be doing right here in this encounter is eliminating the fodder using the blade mode, without anything, like just only the blade mode like this. Slice through the first guy. Second guy comes in, and I easily slice through him as well. Now the spawn rules come into play. The spawn rules and the resource management come into play right here. I need 1 homing missile, or just a missile, to shoot at this guy from afar to use this room tools mechanic right here, where I use the things given to me in the room, and this also feeds into the spawn rules. This way I'm fighting this guy alone rather than fighting him with 2 Mastiffs to make the battle hard on myself. Here's a quick little cute little juggle that I'm doing in the fight right here against him. And by here, you basically get the point. After this is done, I'm going to be met with 2 Mastiffs, and what I'm going to be using against them is the most optimal way of approaching them, which does involve using the Psi to stun one of them, and then getting up close. But the catch is I'm going to be using the Ripper mode to instantly dispose of one of the Mastiffs. So now that this guy is done, I don't want to use my fuel. I want to keep my fuel, not even canceling anything. And when I do the blade mode, I want to make sure I want to grab him so that I have access to the Ripper mode. Now I approach a little forward to spawn in the Mastiffs. I activate the Psi so that it's fully charged and I'm ready when they spawn in. I move a little forward to spawn in the Mastiffs, again feeding it to the spawn rules lesson that we learned in the video. This guy's ahead of me right here. I try to attack him. I drop the combo, but the approach is still the same. Next up is only this one last Mastiff, and what I do with him is some more Psi shenanigans. Now the Psi is like very, very special because it can do the things it can do, which is stunning the enemy the way it does. And that's about it. This is basically the encounter right now, and you notice how many strats I used that I explained in the video. Only now you have a better understanding of what I used in the video. I'm even gonna use Delimbing here that I explained in the video, and some jump shenanigans on his grabs. A lot of the strats got used in this encounter, and I truly love it, honestly. And here's the end of the encounter. Very, very beautifully done. And now, ladies and gentlemen, after all that time, I don't know how long this video is gonna be. I'm gonna be editing it. It's gonna take a long time. Getting footage from Metal Gear Rising was way harder than I thought. It wasn't as easy as God of War's footage. It was very, very easy to get that footage. Even though it was three games, it was easier to get the footage than I am right now in one game. But all in all, I really hope you guys learned something out of this video. I hope you come out of this video learning something, and if you have any question regarding anything, just ask me down in the comments. I will gladly try to help. If I don't come up with a solution, I'm gonna ask my friends, be it Rank, be it Hyperfist, be it Dante, whoever it is watching this video. I'm gonna be trying my best to answer your comments down below if you have any question. And if I don't answer in time, hopefully someone else comes into the comments and answers you, as we are a lovely community here in Extreme Gameplays. But anyways, reaching the end of this video, all that I can ask from you is to seek your path of mastery in this game. Trust me, restart encounters as much as you can. Replay the game as much as you can, and if I ever had one recommendation regarding this game, it would be to do a no upgrade run without buying any moves. That challenge run truly hardens you as a player, and it truly starts off your your quest for mastery in Metal Gear Rising. Highly recommend that run. Very good run. With all that said, there is also something else I'm going to ask from you, and it's that if you came out of this video learning something, if you enjoyed the presentation of this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it's going to help the growth of the channel. I do make combat guide for other games as well, be it God of War or Devil May Cry games. I will make future combat guides for other games as well, as I am very passionate about teaching combat in games. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something. If you have any notes, leave them down in the comments. If I missed anything, leave them down in the comments. It has been your Extreme Gamer, Zesty. Peace!